Hello, welcome to the training program that we are running now in the first quarter of 2021 in the NorEt Aptitude project. This is a kind of executive summary for the core people working there. It's open for everybody, of course, but it's rather directed at you for a very brief walkthrough of what we are going into now, what is expected. And I start by a sort of general perspective on digital humanism, which is not anymore just about making statistical correlations between terms in old text or pictures of artifacts that it's difficult to get that in the museums all around the world, so you can study it online. It's more about what happens to fundamental concepts like time, space, text, the textual universe, routines, and all kinds of work as a consequence of digitalization. And we are not delving into that except to say that before we might imagine work like this, and now the last year, 2020, we have discovered that this is broken up in that case by the pandemic, but in general, the long-term trend is that we don't need to sit together so tightly as we used before. We can use the internet to communicate and re-establish work conditions, and that's what we are doing now. And the entire training program is based on the fact that both due to the COVID requirements, but also long-term, we do not need to travel so much to work together. We can also do that online. That doesn't mean that we should not travel, because sometimes that is very useful. That has also been proven by the last year. But we reduce that, and we have to change the way we work according to that need to reduce the travel. Now, another rather serious aspect of digitalization is what's happening to the workplace. I have some numbers from McKinsey, that kind of advisory company, consultant company. And they have studied work. I have only data from Europe, but there are similar data from Asia, Africa, United States. And of the 230 million people working in Europe, they consider that 51 million are in the danger of losing the work because of digitalization within not so long time, 5 to 10 years. But another 59 million are at risk because of the COVID. And then if you take the intersection between these two groups, you find, according to McKinsey, 24 million. That's 1 out of every 10 jobs. And they have been more or less closed down because of COVID, but because of digitalization, they will not reopen. This is a serious issue, and it requires that educational institutions are open to retrain and further train people all over Europe, but also on the global level. So when we are dealing with paramedics, that's one example of training that should be open for people who want to do important work. It's required by society, but they don't find appropriate work according to their skills, so they need to be reskilled. That's part of my perspective of what we are doing. Now, going into the more nitty-gritty, the texts I mentioned before is undergoing change, and we get these digital textbooks with and learning object. The digital textbook has a structure, and the learning objects like videos and audio files or pictures and interactive pictures and interactivities of various kinds that we can program on the computer, that is sort of embedded in the page or the units of these documents. And to learn how that is done, that is a core component of this training program. And in order to make the videos, we might need a kind of a studio setup. We don't need very expensive, big scale things to create quite okay presentations like the one I'm making now is made at home, basically in a setup like this. And you can reproduce that at work, or in some cases, or also even at home, with the equipment that it's described here and that is provided in this project. It's also useful with a mobile phone and a gimbal, this kind of thing that makes the picture very stable if you want to move more more around, not have this kind of lecture style, but more demonstration style or reportage style kind of videos. Now, to make a good web page, you might start with a PowerPoint and then have that as a background, and there's support for that in the Zoom software, and you will find that in all the softwares as well. And using this kind of production studio, you can record your lecture, build the picture, and then create a web page. So starting with a PowerPoint, having a production process, and then ending up with a web page as the core unit, the basic unit that we count when we produce content. So it might have an introduction, maybe a video with some transcripts. It might be an interactive pictures. We will learn how to do that. And then some interactive questions that the student can test their own knowledge. And of course, we don't build all the pages in the same way, but basically these logic, presentation and interaction are core. And I believe that we need around 5 pages for 1 hour of student work. And that means that if you have a one study point in the European Credit and Transfer System, one ECTS, that is 30 hours. And if we work interactively online for 10 hours with this kind of material and do other things, we have webinars or seminars or reading traditional literature, then for those 30 hours, there will be 10 hours to work with this material, and 5 pages for the hour, that's 50 pages. So to support one study point, 50 pages, 5 study points, 250 pages. That's what we are aiming for. And in this program now, we have decided on 3 editorial committees. 2 will be directed towards emergency medicine, paramedics topics, and the 3rd one on e-learning. And everybody who takes part in this course are required to work in an editorial committee and work on developing the content. That's the best way to learn, and that's how we can get results for the project. So it's also possible not only to have video, we can have an audio component like here, and if you have a picture and a comment, that's also very good. And many people cannot afterwards discern if you have good pictures as some audio or a video. The reception, the understanding of what is happening is basically the same. So we want to vary a bit between videos and audio lectures. Now, what we want to end up with are collections, as I mentioned, 2 on paramedics, 1 on e-learning. So here we have several. Here we have like 3 times 4, 12, but we would like to end up with 3 of them. I have a reasonably good developed work in this field before the summer, and then make that sort of ready for like 5 ECTS, 250 pages for each in the fall. So here is the table of contents of the online course. And mind you, this is not the reader. It's not to sit down and read. It is an invitation to try for yourself. And it's also so, this course is not made that the teacher or lecturer, in many cases it would be me, would sort of take you through the moves, and then you get some homework. It doesn't work like that, not at all. We are practicing the flipped classroom, meaning that you study on your own or in groups, with support in this material and geared towards creating things like creating videos, creating the audio files, writing the material, finding the pictures, making interactive assignments. And then when we meet, we summarize and discuss the experience of doing that. So we turn it around. It's not that I drag through the program, so to speak. It's the group of students or participants that do the work in an investigative manner before we meet. And then we can clarify and use our total resources to understand better and to sort of iron out the glitches. And the reason we are doing this is not for our own cause, but because that is how we want the other students to work later on. So we must change our way of teaching in order for the flipped classroom to take hold. And I believe that is one of the really important changes when we digitize, that students will work more on their own and then use the teacher or the lecturer as a resource for advice to solve problems that they have already experienced. So that's that. I look very much forward to work with you on this for the coming 6 weeks. And mind you, set aside like 6 to 8 hours every week for those 6 weeks. Good luck.